Today, we will talk about compound interest. Now, this topic, the whole idea of a compound interest is more related to an economics class, but in this lesson, we're going to find out how can you calculate a compound interest. Now, the main idea that we're going to see in this video is that you're going to use the following formula in order to calculate a compound interest. The formula, you can see it here. It's made out of plenty of variables. We will talk about each variable individually, and we're going to do some examples to show how we can use the following formula. Okay, let's get started. Now, here, first, let's talk about this formula. If you want to found out the compound interest in a problem, you're going to use this formula, which is P equals parenthesis 1 plus r over n exponent nt. Now let's talk about each of those variables here. Each variable has a different meaning. FB is the future value of the deposit, is the future amount of money that you're going to have at the end of a certain scenario. P is the principal or amount of money that you deposited, or you can think about this is your starting point. This is with how much money you start with. So this is your start point. Principal, we use for the amount that you start with. R is the annual interest. Now here, there's something important that we would like to point out. When we talk about R, we need to put the value for R in decimal form. In R, we don't use percentage. In R, we need to convert the percentage into decimal form. And now that we have the decimal form, we will plug it into the formula. Now moving on to the next variable, N is the number of times compounded per year. This, it's always going to be given to you in the problem. You just need to identify it and plug it in. It's how many times does the event happen per year. So it's pretty important to point out that it's per year. And T is the easiest variable to remember, which is time. So FB is the future value. P is the money that you start with, or the principal. R is the rate, which should always be given in decimal form. N is the number of times which is compounded per year, the number of times that an event happens per year. And T is the amount of time in years. So now that we kind of have a small understanding about the variables, the strategy here is to first identify all the variables in your problem, and then you just plug it into the formula and you would obtain a result. That's the strategy. Again, our strategy is to identify the value for each of those variables in each problem. Once that we have those, we plug it into the formula. So let's do an example here. Let's look at example 1. Now in the word problem, the first thing that you want to do is just underline key things that you think are going to be important. But again, what you need to do first is just identify the value for those variables. I know that I need to know FB. I need to know P, R, N, and let's do T here. So your strategy is just first read the problem and try to put values for the following variables. So now let's see. If you take a car loan for 2,500. Okay, so if you take a car loan, this is your principal. Because if you take a car loan, that is the amount of money that you start with. That's how much you start owning. So 2,500, that's the amount of money that we start with. So that is my principal. So for P, let's put 2,500. Okay, let's keep reading. With an interest rate, so here it is, interest rate of 6.5%. Again, this is my P. Here, interest rates. Now this is my R, because R is annual interest rate. But remember that we need to put it in decimal form. So we need to convert 6.5% into decimal. There's two strategies here. Either you can move the decimal places, or you can just get your calculator, put the percentage, any percentage. If you want to convert it into a decimal form, just divide it by 100. So that means that my R is nothing more than 0.065. Okay, so we found another value. So now what we need to do is keep reading and see if we can identify any more values. So here it says that it's compounded quarterly. To compound quarterly, that means that the event happens 4 times. So that means that n is going to have a value of 4, because n, again, is the number of times compounded per year. Here it's telling you that it's compounded quarterly, so an n has a value of 4. And now we keep reading. No payment required for the first 5 years. What would your balance be at the end of those 5 years? So here, t holds a value of 5. The only variable that we don't know anything about is fp, which says that we need to use our formula to find out the value of fp, which makes sense because here on the last sentence is telling you what will your balance be at the end of 5 years, which is telling you what is the future value of your deposit, which is fp. So now that we have all those values, we're going to plug it into our formula. So now we have fp equals p, but p, I know that is, oops, I think I forgot a zero here, 2500. So plug into the formula, 2500 now, parenthesis 1 plus r, which r we found it to be 0.065, divided by n, where n is 4. All we're doing is plugging in the values that you know to the formula. N times t, so that's saying that 4 times 5. All right, this is what we have. All we got to do now is just plug in those values. So let's see. I always like to do it by parts. First, figure out what you have inside the parentheses. So let's see, what do we have inside the parentheses? Well, I first like to do just the division. So let's divide this. 0.065 divided by 4. This small expression is equal to 0.01625. Now I need to add 1. So that means that inside the parentheses, I have 1.01625, and 4 times 5, that's 20. Excellent. Now that I have this, just plug it in as it is in the calculator. So we're going to have 25 with 3 zeros, parenthesis 1.01625, close parenthesis. Here's the button for exponent, so exponent 20. So that means that our future value is going to be 34,510.49. Let's just round it to the nearest 100 here. So here's your future value. So what does this mean? It means that you start owning 2,500, and after 5 years, you're going to end up paying $34,510. So this is how interest work. You borrow money, and after a certain amount of time, you need to pay that money back plus interest. So here, you just borrow 2,500, but then after 5 years, you need to give back 34,510. So now let's look at example 2 now. Let's bring our formula down here. Okay, excellent. Now again, if you're talking about compound interest, the first thing that you need to know is, well, what are the values for the variables that I need to use? So let's just write them down here. N and T. These are the values for the variables that you need to find out. So here they are. This is your first objective. Find out what is the value for each of those variables. Okay. So now let's start reading the problem. It says right here, if 4,000 is invested, okay. So if 4,000 is invested, this is how much money you start with. So this is your principal. So that means that P is equal to 4,000. Okay. Let's continue reading. In an account paying 3% interest. So this is my rate. But again, when we talk about rate, we don't put percentage. So we need to convert that percentage into decimal. You can move two decimal places, or you can just use your calculator, 3 divided by 100. So that gives you 0.03. So that says that my rate, the value for R, is just 0.03. Now we continue reading. Now here it says that it's compounded monthly. Now if it's compounded monthly, the whole idea of N is how many times does the event happen per year. So if it's compounded monthly, you know that there's 12 months in a year. If there's 12 months in a year, that means that the value of N is 12. Because N is how many times does the event happen per year. And here it's telling you that it's compounded monthly. So every month is going to get compounded. So that means that in one whole year, you're going to get compounded 12 times. So that means that N has a value of 12. Now here it says, what is the balance after 7 years? So here they're giving you a time. The time is T. So that says that T has 7. FB, again, is the thing that we're looking for. Because at the end, what is the balance after 7 years? So it's telling you what is the future value. Excellent. We got values for each of the following variables. All we need to do now is just plug it into a formula. So here we have a formula. FP, we don't know what that is, so we just write it down. P, which is 4,000, parentheses, 1 plus R, where R is 0.03, divided by N, where N has a value of 12, close parentheses, N times T, so that becomes, this is 12 times 7. Excellent. So this is what we have now. Again, one strategy that I use is that, let me just rewrite this 7. Okay. One strategy that I use is I first just figure out what's inside the parentheses. So let's figure out what's inside the parentheses. I do the fraction first. So I'm going to put 0.03 divided by 12. That's that. I'm going to add 1. So that means that this is what's inside the parentheses. So let's just rewrite our formula. So FB equals still 4,000, but now inside the parentheses, I know that this is the decimal representation of it. So that's 1.0025. And 12 times 7, just figure it out real quick here. So that's 84. Excellent. So now we can just put this in the calculator. So let's see. We got, erase this, and let's just put the whole expression in the calculator. So now let's see. We got 4,000. Oops. Parentheses 1.00. Okay, 25. So this is what we have. Exponent 84. Excellent. So that means that the future value is going to be this expression, 4,933.42 cents. Don't forget about the decimal. I mean the money sign. So here, that's the final value. So that means that you owned or you invested, I'm sorry. So actually, you're earning money now. So you invested $4,000. You put $4,000 in the bank. You don't do anything to it. They're still in the bank. And that means that after 7 years, you're going to have in your bank $4,933. So now, here's your entrance ticket. Solve the following. Find the future value for the following compound interest problem.